Hello everybody and welcome to Project Trade. This is the Trading Highlights Show. In this one we're going to be looking at a technical trading strategy. And it's as simple as it can be with the simple moving average crossover, a strategy which is familiar to most traders. We do have a detailed video on the simple moving average which will be linked in the video description if you want to check that out. But in a sentence, what it's doing is it's adding together all of the individual prices from each of the periods that you're looking back at and then taking that total and dividing it by the number of periods. This gives you a mean average of market price. It smooths out that noise. For our crossover strategy, we'll be using two averages. Our fast average will be the 50 period, which looks a little something like this. And our slow moving average will be the 200 period average, which will be a bit like this one here. The 50 and the 200, they are a classic combination for fast and slow averages. Their crossovers are commonly known as the death cross and the golden cross. So what are our specific rules for entering the trade? To satisfy our entry criteria, we need the 50 period faster average to cross over that 200 period slower average. That is when we make our move. You can see here on the left, when the blue line crosses below the purple line, that's when we would enter our sell trade. And over there on the right hand side, when it comes back up over the purple, that's when we would be a buyer. That is all we will need for our entry signals. Just be aware that when we start a trading session, we will have to wait for the crossover to happen rather than jumping in on an existing trend. Now we know how we will enter a trade, let's figure out how we will manage our money once we're in that trade. First off, every single day I get asked by thousands of people, hey, when I open a trade and risk X amount of fiat currency, should I hold that same X amount of gold in my personal vaults? Do I need to back my trades with real gold? And my answer to most of these people is no. There is a simpler, more efficient way to manage your risk. First off, we're going to split our one trade into two half trades or sub trades, and we will risk 0.25% of our capital on each of those half trades for a total of 0.5% capital risk. Obviously that does seem quite small, and a lot of traders will use the 2% rule for when they're trading, but we want to keep our capital pretty tight on this one so we know how much we're willing to risk. When are we actually going to get out of the trade? To help us with that, we're going to use the average true range. It's a well-known volatility indicator and we have done a video on it which will be in the description, but to say here the ATR, it just measures the average range of each candle from top to bottom. And if you have a look in the top left there where that red circle is, that is our ATR value. That is what we will be referring to if we say 1x ATR, 2x ATR for setting our take profit or stop loss. That is what we're referring to. For both our half trades, we'll be setting our stop loss 3 times the ATR value from our entry price. It might seem a little wide, but trust me on this one, we do want to give them room to move. For our take profit, we'll be setting one of our half trades as 3 times ATR from our entry price, so that will mirror the stop loss distance. And if we're lucky enough for that take profit to trigger, then at that point on our second half trade, we will change our stop loss to be a trailing stop loss. And we'll set that trailing stop loss back 3 times the ATR value, which is effectively our entry price. Remember, the trading stop loss will only advance in our favor as they cannot drop back at any point, meaning that at this stage we would actually be in guaranteed profit for our entire trade, because our second half trade could only finish back at our entry price for nothing gained, nothing lost, but we would have already taken profit on our first half trade, so it is a very good place to be in because it's all upside. Now we know both how we will enter and how we will exit. We just need to know what we're trading on, which will be a 1 minute time frame. It is going to be like standing 2 foot in front of a jet engine out there. It will be incredibly noisy on that chart. And we're trading Forex on the euro dollar pair. That is the big one. It is the most traded pair in all of Forex. Certainly not the most manipulated pair, of course, just a popular one. And we will be journaling all of our trades so that we can track our progress and cement in writing how good or bad the strategy actually is. That is absolutely everything we need apart from the platform, so let's get in there. Okay, just gone 10:57 a.m. and here we are on that euro US dollar 1 minute chart. You can see price has been coming down here. We've got both our indicators pulled up. That's the 50 there in the blue and the 200 moving average in the purple. Price has been coming down. It looks like it's going to be making consistently lower lows. We did have an entry that would have been back here. That was quite a ways ago. As you can tell, the next trade we're going to get in is going to be a buy. It did start coming a little bit close here when the price was up in that range, but then it's immediately come way back down. That's our economic calendar for the day. As price continues to just drop quite a bit there. I just noticed that couple of ticks. It really is going down. But yeah, so this is our economic calendar. So some of this Asia stuff, or all this Asia stuff has happened already. Good news for Japan as they beat their GDP Q on Q year on year. And they had another one, industrial production. They also beat by a little bit, 6.5 over 6.2. Whereas China, missing all of their estimates basically. Retail sales, industrial production, employment rate, all a little bit weaker than expected. Not that any of those would affect us on the Euro-US dollar. It's just good to be aware of what's going on around the world. And yeah, nothing really that's going to impact much today. We've got the New York Manufacturing Index. That's their survey coming out 3:30, but it's just New York State, so it might have a minor impact, but I very much doubt it. So yeah, there should be no economic headwinds for us. It means we shouldn't get stopped out on our technical based strategy due to any economic factors. But it will be waiting for that buy signal. We don't have a re-entry signal here, and we can't go until the cross actually happens. Could be that the euro just goes short all day. We don't actually get in a trade, but on the 1 minute chart, there should be enough deviations up and down of the price that eventually we will just get a crossover at some point. And hopefully that crossover turns into a full reversal. We don't want it to just be a temporary crossover in the overall downward trend. But we'll check back in when something a little more interesting is going on for us. Price having a go of it the last 5 or 10 minutes. It is just sneaking back above the 50, which does draw us closer to the crossover. Only managed to just stay above there for a little short while though, just edging through a couple times as price has come back down again the last 5 or 6 bars. Although as soon as you say that, this is what can happen on the 1 minute chart. As soon as you say something, immediately the opposite thing just happens. And it has turned into a bit of a more consistent move above the 50s. It starts to range up there. We want that 50 to actually turn upwards though. Start to turn as that 200 comes down. And we got exactly what we wanted there as price just closes above the 200 and the 50 has started to turn. But then again, price crashing down these last few minutes here. Look at that, back below the 200, back below the 50. We could still see a cross depending on whether this keeps going. But if it does keep going, those lines will avoid one another and the 50 will do another sharp turn. Just going to zoom in a bit here because these lines are very nearly touching. Look at that, they are so close. These lines touching now, but price is coming down a bit. I'm going to put up the ATR just in case we can have that ready. And there's the ATR just shy of 1 pip at the moment at 9 pipettes. So now we can see that the 50 is just poking through the 200. If it closes like that, then we will be getting in, even if price is coming down. If price comes down enough, this will turn, it won't close above there, it will go flatter. This is very close, so we're going in. We've got about 5 seconds here. Let's see if this closes, see what the next candle starts doing, but we will look to get in. Yeah, that's definitely closed past it. So even though price is looking like it's going to go down, we're going to calculate our risk so we can get into this trade. We've got 8 pipettes down here. We are going to round that up to 1 pip as 8 pipettes is tiny. So we're doing 3 times ATR. So we're going to call that 3 pips either way. And so our account balance down here, you can see is £98,362. We got 2 half trades that we're going to go in with. This is really dropping. If we got in straight away, that would be bad. And it still doesn't look great, but this is a crossover, so we're going to go for it. Here's our risk on screen now as we've calculated it. And so let's get in there. There we are now. So we're in with our 2 buy trades. And so we can pull this up and we can say, well, it's 3 pips. We can call that 30 points. And we can do the same for our take profit on that one. You can see that appearing just up there and down there. And then likewise with this one here, we can call that 30 points for our 3 pips. And that will change to a trailing stop loss if the take profit on our first trade is able to trigger. But that is another big drop from price. It looks like it wants to come down. We might not have a bad entry position if it can turn, but the current trend is not looking good. And that 50 you can see has already turned against what we want. And it really looks as though that 50 is going to cross back under the 200. This could be terrible. We could get stuck in a really bad range here. But if this 50 does cross under the 200, what that means is that we will close the buy trade we're in, wherever that's at the time, and we will enter into the sell trade. Okay, so it has closed past there now. First thing we're going to do is just shut off these two buy trades here for losses. And now we'll calculate our new risk. Risks staying the same, so we 3 pips again. Just round up this 8 pipette to 1 pip. And so we're in with our volume this time a little bit lower at 11.32. In fact, I'll round that up to 11.33. Here it is on screen now, the risk. And there we are, we're in our sell trades now. So let's set those stop loss and take profit again. That's one of them. And a stop loss of 30 points for this one, which again will change to a trailing stop loss if we're ever so lucky. Price headed up towards our stop loss there again. Looks like we're going to be in close to the bottom if this carries on and breaches it. Which it does in fact breach just there. So that is another loss, unfortunately. And there we see a move downwards. So we really did get in a bad time and we got caught out in the retracement as the move does continue to the south. We will be waiting before we get another entry signal, I'm afraid. I've just pulled up the trade history here so you can see the first 2 trades. That was where we got in the long and then had to drop it there when it came back out the other side, which wasn't the worst loss. This one definitely feels worse when we see it now. And we can see we get in here right at the bottom and then up here, bosh, it gets us. Had we gotten immediately at the start of this candle, that 3 pips would have been up here, thereabouts, and then we would have not been stopped out. It would have taken profit down here. Well, if it was up here, we would have taken profit, yeah, in this line here. So a little bit unfortunate with that one, but that is the way it goes. First signs of a new crossover appearing as we see the price back above the 50 average for the last few periods. Price a bit uncertain around this 50 average now. It did dip underneath there again, but now coming back up a little bit. It's not sure what to do. Price getting just a little bit past that resistance level now. It does look like it wants to break past the 200. Yeah, now we see that move above 200. Price closing for the last 2 periods above it. The 50 is chasing. Price taking a big hit there, gone well below the 50, and that's on quite an increase in volume as well. And it has continued to push down even further below the 50, which is going to drag that away from the 200. Less likely to see a crossover, obviously, if price carries on this way. Well, price came down a lot, but it is coming strong out the gate as we just passed 2 o'clock. Last couple bars have really had an up bounce there. But comes back down there. This right here is a very uncertain candle. And all the way above the 50 and almost all the way to the bottom of that support area there. Will we get another bounce from this level here? We had a little one there before it's come straight back down. It's going to be tested again. And it does breach it this time in pretty spectacular fashion as it's just closed there. We can see that is a drop. And this drop does continue here. It bounced off a little bit of that previous level there. You can see it lines up like that. So it did bounce off of that and immediately has come back down and got to a lower low than it did before. It's going to be a while before we get a trade. Yeah, that drop's still going. Down it goes. That euro not in favor here against the dollar. Things turn red even more. Price did just creep above the 50 there a couple minutes ago. Just a little bit above. That was the New York Open there. So we did see a touch increase in volume, but not a huge amount to be fair. But yeah, that was the Open. And we've got those manufacturing numbers for you, New York, coming out in 15 minutes or so. 3:30, that's when they drop. I don't think it's going to have much of an impact, but it's worth checking them out and seeing what the vibe is in New York. Here comes those New York manufacturing numbers then. Five minutes after the release of those numbers now, and we are seeing a bit of a breakout. It was very rangy before the price, but now it's gone definitely to the upside for the euro. 31.1 was the forecast for the manufacturing index. Came in at 18.3. That does mean that they think conditions are getting better. However, it's not as good as they thought it was going to be. And so it would make sense that the dollar would get weaker off the back of that news if it's going to have an impact. Either way, price is going to the upside right now. Price getting above the 200 as well there, and the 50 is chasing it, so it's looking quite nice. It ranged a bit there, but another push, and the move continues again. Just a couple minutes later, those candles are pushing green. It's what we like to see. Again, higher and higher movements from price here, making it very likely that this crossover is going to happen. Price really with a rocket on it here again, last period moving up a lot. So these lines are almost certainly going to cross unless something terrible happens to absolutely crash the price. So let's pull up the ATR and have a look. There's our ATR. I'm sure a lot of you are going to have the same worry I'm having when I'm looking at this, is that once we get in, this price is going to exhaust itself, and even on a retracement, it's going to come back down. So there we've got the 50 average sticking through the 200. That's the first period it's gone through, so we are just going to wait for this one to close, and then we'll be in the trade. Okay, so this is going to close. We're going to call this 1.5 pips, so that is 4.5 pips for the total stop loss and initial take profit. There is our risk on screen if you want to check that out now. So let's get in the trade. There's our two buy trades. They did enter in 1 pipette off from each other. A little bit disappointing there. Do try to be quick on the draw to get them identical, but hey ho. Let's set that stop loss and take profit. So again, 4.5 pips, so we'll go 45 points and 45 points on that one. And then for this one right here, we'll just drop on that stop loss. If we do get the take profit, which judging by the price movement at the moment, it doesn't look like we will, but if we do get the take profit on the one, we'll be able to change this to that trading stop loss. Getting dangerously close to our stop loss already. This was, yeah, one of them's gone, and then the other one's gone as well with that extra little pipette there. So it has, most of the move there had exhausted itself to knock us out for another loss. Price starting to make moves now beneath the 200. It did just range for about 20 minutes or so there. Now it drops below as the 50 average starts to turn back down as well. Strong move there beneath the 200. Wow, really pushing down. If you see a couple more of those, then again, 50 will catch up with that 200 and we'll see another crossover. Price though now come back up above the 200, above the 50, looking less likely now. The 50 and the 200 are still relatively close to one another, so if a big drop does come, it wouldn't take too long for the actual cross to follow. But at the moment it does feel like it's going to be very rangy, and it's questionable as to whether we actually want the trade. Price getting a big way to the upside there though the last 10 or 15 minutes, and the 50 is going with it as well. Because we don't have that re-entry signal, look at it move that 50, because we don't have that re-entry signal, and I don't know now how long it's going to be before we can get a crossover, I'm going to call it there for the day's session. We are 5 to 11 here on the Euro US dollar 1 minute chart again, and we've just missed a crossover about 5 or 10 minutes ago, one to the long there. Price is coming back down a bit, but yeah, it looks like we would have gone in maybe about there. Possibly that could have been a run-up. It wouldn't have been enough. Probably still would be in this trade right now. So it'd be interesting to see where that goes. But at the same time, obviously, we want to see this come downways so we can get this 50 across the 200 there. Economic calendar today is a pretty big one, to be fair. After in part one, that was yesterday. There was basically no events going on for us. Today, there's been, well, not relevant to us, but there was plenty on the Great British Pound this morning, unemployment, average weekly earnings, claimant count change, all sort of favourable figures for them, to be fair. Unemployment coming in just slightly better at 4.7 against 4.8. 12 o'clock, that's just over an hour's time, we have got employment change for the entire Eurozone and GDP for the entire Eurozone. Those are both quarterly and yearly figures. So that could definitely have an impact if something comes outside of these forecasts here especially. And then later on this afternoon, we've got a lot of retail information coming in for the United States dollar. So 3:30, we got retail sales month on month, core retail sales month on month. Then not long after, 4:15, industrial production month on month coming in. 5 o'clock then, still on the dollar, it'll be business inventories month on month and retail inventories month on month. finally 8:30 tonight, which we probably won't still be trading 8:30, but if we are, Fed Chair Jay Powell will be making a speech. So yeah, a lot of things on there that could have an impact. So particularly we'll be looking at 12 o'clock for the EU employment change and GDP, but realistically it's this one right here that's probably going to make the trend. If a trend is going to happen, if an impact is going to change, it's likely going to start with the first of the US numbers, these retail sales at 3:30. They'll probably start crashing it, and then 8:30 Jay Powell will come out and fix it all. Yeah, so we'll be looking out for those European numbers in very little bit over an hour there. Otherwise, it'll just be the crossover that we're looking for. We need that downward price. We want to see it below the 50, below the 200, get that 50 turning and get us into a sell trade. Price getting on a bit of a run there as it gets to a higher high from here to here. Yeah, look at that run there. I think we are going to be waiting for an entry, and we only missed it by just a few moments. I mean, if we were in, say, either of these candles here, that wouldn't have stopped us out, so we would have been on a nice run about now. It's going to take a long while for this to correct where this is actually going to cross back over. Hopefully these 12 o'clock numbers can change the direction. Something weak for the euro perhaps would be useful for our strategy right now. Never mind the employment and GDP of millions across the Eurozone. We're just interested in seeing the euro get weaker, get below that 50 and 200, give us a crossover, not keep pulling further away. We are seeing price now come down a little bit below the 50. It's closed for the last two periods as the 50 has been running up pretty quickly before. Still trading the 200 a good way though. It's just ranging between the 50 and the 200 at the moment, the last 10 minutes or so. Less than 2 minutes, we got those big euro numbers now. That's the GDP and the employment for the quarter. If a lot more people are unemployed than we thought there would be, or if the GDP is a lot weaker than we thought it would be in the Eurozone, that is what could cause the price to come down and then allow us to be able to get into a nice crossover trade. Here's hoping. Okay, here comes the release. Bit of a delayed increase in the volume. We are seeing it now. The last couple of minutes have had a spike up. There wasn't really anything at the open. Price is going consistently down though, or the euro's price is going consistently down. Big drop in price in that last candle there was sort of starting to range just up and down, and that's taken a major hit south below the 200. We see that 50 following in a steep chase. Good signs for us potentially getting in a trade shortly. The drop continues right now. There's a lot of downward pressure going on. Price having a bit of a bounce up after those big sell-offs there. It will need to get a hurry on if it wants to stop the crossover though, because that 50 is hurtling towards the 200. It was looking promising. Now it's looking pretty uncertain. You can see price hopped up over the 200 and the 50 in that candle there. They were getting really tight together, and they still are going to get a little bit closer together for a period or two. But if price goes on up this 50 line, it will skirt away from the 200 and it will avoid that crossover, leaving us waiting. They are still getting a little bit closer together, these lines, but that 50 is flattening. The 200's coming up, and there they are touching the lines. This is going to be very tight. The 50 is still coming down a notch as well, with the 200 going up. So yeah, we could see it. We could see that crossover in a period or two. I'm just going to pull up the ATR so we can prepare ourselves on that front if the crossover does come. There it is. Currently reading at 1 pip. That will be our minimum, as you've seen in part 1. So there it's dropped to 9 pipettes. If we do enter, it will still be at 1 pip ATR value that we'll take it as, which for a 3 times ATR value is 3 pips either way. Yep, and the 50 is in fact sneaking through the 200. Let me zoom in there just in case you can't see that. There's a little bit of blue sneaking through the purple line there. And that will be our entry signal if this closes beyond the purple. So it has closed through there, which means we can look at our ATR and see it's still at 9 pipettes, so we can round that to 1 pip. Let's calculate our risk. So you can see that on screen now based on our account balance of £97,089. Let's get in the trade before it drops too much. Okay, so we have our 2 sell trades there at 11.17, 11.17. So let's put our stop loss here at 30 points, and we'll put the take profit for that one at 30 points. And for this one here, stop loss at 30 points. And as we've said in the previous videos, as soon as that take profit triggers, or if it triggers, that will mean that we can change this to a trailing stop loss. So let's set that in. Let's zoom out one. So you can see here the range that we're working in. We've got our take profit down here, and we've got the stop loss above here. So not a bad position to get in if it does want to come down for us. Just want to say one of the reasons why I'm rounding up to 1 pip from here as opposed to just going, well, say that's 8 pipettes, can we just go for 2.4 pips? It's because we use so much margin on the 1 minute chart where it's so tight. They don't know that we're going to close it off after 3 pips or 4 pips. They don't know that. So you can end up, when you're only looking at like a 2 pip stop loss, you can end up using all of your margin or too much of your margin to actually be able to open the trade. You can see here we're currently using 76,000 of our available margin with only 20,000 left. Getting very close to our take profit level here. It's looking nice. We are very close now. If we can just go a little bit further. And there we go. We finally get the take profit to trigger after that range. So we can switch this up here. The trailing stop is going to be 30 points behind. Let's pop that in. And there we see the trailing stop loss proc forward there. So we are in guaranteed profit, which is fantastic, especially after some of those losses we took yesterday. Although, has to be said, we've got to watch these 50 and 200 closely still, because they are nearly touching. And if that 50 goes above there, again, we'll be closing out this trade profit for however much profit we're in, and then we'll be entering a buy trade. And even now, actually, we can see the 50 is touching just past. Can't zoom in anymore, but I can see a whisper of blue line coming across that 200 there. If that closes like that, and price is still coming down, so it might not. There it's not. See, there it's fully overlapping. So right now, we won't be entering the trade. And so after that big decrease in price there, they're still overlapping. The 50 now not poking through at all, coming back under the other way. And we can see that trading stop loss has moved quite a bit from the entry price, which is always good, bagging up more profits for us. Starting to see a tiny bit of air now between the 50 and the 200. As price continues to come down, there is a lot of selling pressure going on there. And this was very, very close to being a crossover, and still could be if price launched back upwards. That line is tweaking up and down a little bit there. Did retrace for a couple minutes back there, but we are getting a little bit more out of that trailing stop loss now, as these lines are very much moving apart. They touched again there, but you can see they've come apart, and now there's a real gap forming. The drop continues. It's looking good for us when it comes to the profit margin. And the trailing stop loss triggering there, but it certainly served its purpose. We did manage to get about 6.5 pips out of it, which the take profit of the first trade was 3 pips. So we managed to get over twice the amount out of that trailing stop loss. So pretty good trade there. Price with a bit of a bump for the first time in a while there. Not really been doing much at all this last 30, 40 minutes or so since we were in the trade. Hopefully that boost there is a sign of things to come, as the 50 and 200 at the moment still quite a way apart. Price coming up a good bit now. That's the moves we want to see. Getting a higher high to there, and then a higher high again to there. See that keep pushing, and we should see these lines start to come together quite a bit more. Price had gone above the 200 a little bit there, but it's dropped way back down now. The last 5 or 6 periods it's come right back down below the 50. And price really starting to come down here. We are a minute away from the New York Forex session open. We cannot get in on this as we don't have the re-entry signal, but we are watching price crash down heavily. And we have managed to get a bit of a reversal going at the moment. It's gone up, what we got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 consecutive periods it's gone up, and just floating a little bit above the 50 for a second there. Bit more selling pressure starting to come in as we're 2 minutes off from these retail numbers. Here come the numbers. Price very jittery. Look at this range on this one candle. 9 pips top to bottom so far, and now it's further. 10 pips. So you can see the massive increase in volume and volatility that's come. These retail sales numbers, they are coming in negative for the dollar. So they were forecast at 0.1%. They've come in at minus 1.1. The euro is the one that's getting weaker at this minute though, but we're likely to see this volatility continue back and forth before an overall trend is decided. But this is dropping fast, so it could just be sell off the euro, get in on the dollar. Core retail sales down negative 0.4%, and they were predicted at 1.4, so that's a miss as well. And the last one of these month-on-month retail figures, the retail control coming in at negative 1% when it was forecast at 2.6. But again, the dollar is getting stronger, we're seeing right now. We are seeing price come back a little bit here. That is a bounce for sure. Hopefully it's more than just a retracement, but it does seem to want to come back down as we're on 5 straight red candles and looking at potentially another one here. And that little green candle there just ended the streak of 13 red candles in a row. A lot of downward pressure even after that volume's leveled off even more. Breaking out from a bit of a range there, again we're seeing back-to-back candles with drops on them. Price really going down. The dollar is rallying big time. Continued sell-off, looking like strawberry fields forever out there, nothing but red. And now it's pretty much just been ranging for the last half an hour or so. We've got just under 10 minutes before we get these retail and business inventory numbers. That might shake things up, but at the moment, 50 and 200 still a long way apart from each other. I don't know how much impact these month-on-month inventories are going to have on the price here. Probably not a lot at all, if any, but hopefully the retail and business inventories are absolutely depleted, way worse than forecast, and we see a strong move in favor of the euro against the dollar. Yeah, so not much movement coming off those inventory numbers. Price fairly stable, coming down a little bit, again below the 50. And those 50 and 200 lines are still very far apart. Wide margin there. How far are those? It's 18 pip difference there. They're not the type of numbers that are going to change the direction here without anything major, which hasn't come. The next big thing that could happen is Powell speaking at 8:30, but that is over 3 hours away. So we're going to leave it there with this session. We did get out one trade in from this sell, and that feels a long time ago now that we were out. It is part 3 of the moving average crossover. We are on the euro US dollar 1 minute chart once again. And we have our 50 moving average pulled up as well as our 200 average down here. We are seeing price drop well below the 50 average here. So hopefully this downward momentum continues. We want to see that 50 start turning, get that price below the 200, get the moving average to cross, and then we're in. On our economic calendar for the day, quite a bit happening. We've already had numbers out of New Zealand. Not that they're going to affect the euro US dollar, but we're seeing the interest rate in New Zealand held and their PPI is higher. That's their producer price index. It's a little bit higher than expected. We had pound numbers, Great British pound numbers at 9 a.m. just a couple hours ago. They had PPI and CPI. Again, their PPI coming in a little bit higher than expected, but their CPI was actually lower. They've had a 0.0%, so no inflation when they thought there was going to be. I think most people at the moment would agree, including the Bank of England, that it's good to see a little bit of a slowdown there with the rate of inflation. But on to the ones that are actually going to affect us. 12 o'clock, just under an hour's time. We've got CPI numbers coming out for the Eurozone. Those are the monthly ones. Whether they're going to have much impact on the price, whether they'll increase volatility and make it jittery up there, not sure at the moment, as the numbers that came out 12 o'clock yesterday for the euro, those employment numbers didn't have a huge impact, so could be the same story with the CPI. Likely, same as yesterday, our big numbers, if they're going to be a big change in direction, will be the 330 ones coming out of the US. They've got housing starts, building permits, month on month there. Those ones could have an impact on the price. Again, increase in volatility, and they make that crossover more likely to happen, meaning we've got to keep an eye on them. And then a little bit later on, 5:30, you've got the oil stock count standard for a Wednesday. That probably won't really have much impact on us at all. And then 9 o'clock tonight, you got the Federal Open Market Committee, the minutes of their last meeting a few weeks ago. Those will be coming out. Just gives a more detailed perspective on what they said at that meeting. So the big ones for us to watch will be the CPI here. Don't think it will have an impact, but we might see a small uptick in volume for it. And then 330 on the US dollar, these housing starts and permits. If there's going to be a change in direction, it is likely to come from those. So we'll definitely be watching that. Let's get back onto the chart. And price been coming down that bit more. There was a big drop off there, and we're starting to see that 50 turn. It's good news. We want to get in the crossover. Price did have a bounce for a few minutes, but it's come back down already. We are still seeing these lines get closer together. And price continuing to drop here below the 200 now. Just a few minutes before these Euro CPI numbers are released, and price has been hovering between the 50 and the 200 lines, which are getting very close together and still getting tighter. I'm going to pull up the ATR just so we've got that ready. And there it is, currently showing us 1.3 pips or 1 pip 3 pipettes. Here comes those Euro CPI numbers as the lines get ever closer. So as we see these CPI numbers come in on the nose, we got core CPI predicted at minus 0.4, and it's come in at minus 0.4, and the general month-on-month CPI come in at negative 0.1, which is exactly as forecast. As all that's going on, we are seeing the 50 now overlapping with the 200. We're not seeing it poke through just yet, but next period, as we see it roll over, we can now see it sticking through the other side. So if it closes like that, if we see that blue closing the other side of the purple, that's when we'll be entering our trade. So we've got our ATR here. At the moment, it's looking at 1.2 pips, which for our 3 ATR value for stop loss would be 3.6 pips. And there we go. It has just closed past there. ATR reading 1.3, so we're going to go with 3.9. You can see our risk calculated on screen now. And so here we go with our sell trades. And we are in. We got them at the same price to the pipette. So let's go 1/2 trade, going to be 39 points. That's 3 ATR stop loss and 39 points for 3 ATR take profit. And then for our other one, we've just got the 39 point stop loss, which could be changed to a trailing stop loss should our take profit trigger. Let's zoom out a little bit so you can't see the take profit, although it is headed in that direction. There it is down there, a little bit wider than some of our other trades, which have just been 3 pips either side, but it does mean that we'll get a bit more room for it to actually take off. Hopefully a retracement wouldn't cut it out. And now we just patiently wait it out. The price does go in our direction quite nicely. Let's zoom back in a little bit. Price floating up and down around our entry price at the moment. Not a huge amount of movement in either direction. Price now a little bit on the move, but in the wrong direction. It's heading towards our stop loss. Not what we want to see, obviously. And quite a run up there on price. Getting very close to our stop loss. Very close indeed. And it does trigger that, unfortunately. Both of them triggering for the maximum loss. And it does wipe out a lot of those gains from yesterday. Let's see if the 50 can keep coming up and cross over the 200. Get us into a good buy trend if this is going to stick. Price continuing to spike, so at the moment it does look like we got out of our trade at a good time if it's going to keep on going up. There is the trade there. You can see we got in an alright position for when the cross happened. It was on point. However, after ranging a little bit, it did just sneak up and then cut us off up there. Had the potential to break out. It did make a lower low. It didn't have the steam to carry it on. It had looked a bit promising with the price staying consistently above the 50 and the 200 average. But the last few periods here, big red coming through. Price now back below the 200 and back below the 50. No re-entry signal, so we have to wait for that buy crossover. And continues its hard path down, digging deep there, trying to find Antarctica. And now just seeming to settle into its new range. Probably going to be a while before we get an entry signal here. But here comes the rebound. 5 straight green candles and price back above the 50 at last. Let's have a bit more of this. Really bouncing though now. After that jaunt upwards, it came back down, only to go up again, now coming back down once more. It's very uncertain, floating around the 50. And after carrying on in that range for a little bit, price has decided that the drop is on again. That means the 50 is going to drag further from that 200, pushing us further from our entry unless this reverses course pretty sharp. And we're seeing these red candles here. The sell-off does continue for the euro, and that 50 is going to widen from the 200 average. Here's the bounce though. Finally, we are back comfortably above the 50 and getting up towards the 200. Just over 10 minutes before the New York Forex session opens at 3 o'clock. And don't forget, we got building permits and housing starts from the US at 3:30. And just like that now, price settling above the 200 average. Hopefully this 50 can get a move on and catch up with that 200 and get a cross over it. Price just keeping moving up here. It really wants to get up the ladder to the roof, but it cannot last forever. Hopefully it retraces back and then gives us a buying opportunity. These lines cross over just as the retracement ends before a big move starts up that way, in an ideal world. So it's cooled off at the top of this range here. We've still got the lines getting very close together, so this cross could come in the next 5 minutes or so if price doesn't take a serious U-turn downwards. Let's pull up the ATR to get ourselves ready for that. There's our ATR, currently showing 1.2 pips. I've just zoomed in here, and 318, we can see that the blue line has just crossed through the 200. That almost certainly will stick, but we're just going to wait for it to close, as this is the first candle where it's poking through. As soon as it closes, that's when we'll enter our trade. Okay, so now we'll be getting in when this closes in 3 seconds. We're going to treat this as 1.5. It's just dipped down, but it's safer to go from the full period there. So we'll go 1.5. That is a 4.5 stop loss in pips either side. We can calculate our risk. Okay, so you can see our risk on screen now. And here we are, we're going in with 2 buys. And we did get them in at the identical price to the pip, already coming back down nice to see. Wasn't so sure about the actual entry of where we got in, but obviously it was correct per the system to wait for that to close. It just doesn't look great when you get into it, when it's going to those highs. You want to see it pull back and try and get in on that. But anyway, let's set our stop loss and take profit. So we got 45 and 45 for each. So that's 3 times ATR of the 1.5. And then this one right here, just the stop loss, as we know, to 45. So we can see our stop loss just down there. Not as far as it might have seemed with 45, but even if we zoom out, we can just about see that take profit there. Yeah, this is going to be a tough one. I'd say it's much more likely seeming that it's going to retrace, especially since we're halfway there already. Okay, let's zoom back in. And let's keep an eye on this. We'll close the ATR so we can see it a little bit better. There we go. So we've got about 45 seconds until the building permits and house starts month on month both come in. Price lurking just below our entry price at the moment. It is a worry that the volatility from these stats will just knock us out, regardless of whether the trend is upward or not. But let's see if these numbers actually bring the volume and volatility. So just a few minutes after the release of those numbers now, we haven't seen the volatility. There was a slight uptick in volume, but nothing like the retail sales release yesterday. That really started jittering up and down and would have knocked us easily out of this trade. But there's the numbers month on month, pretty weak numbers, both missing the forecasts expected. But as I say, doesn't seem to have had a huge impact so far. We are on the wrong side here, so we are in the red a little bit. I'll just pull this back up here, but hopefully we see it turn and see it head towards our take profit, which we can't see on screen, but we know it's up there somewhere. Price getting dangerously close to our stop loss, and there they do trigger, both of them obviously on the same point, both triggering. That is, unfortunately, very sadly, tragically, another loss for the 5200 crossover. And there is the trade. If we weren't in a terrible position, but it was a bit high in the range after this momentum run up here. And so even just going down to this low here was enough to stop us out. Hopefully it carries on down rather than, as it's looking like, to go back up and find itself renewed momentum. But yeah, we'll have to just wait for the next sell trade now. And suddenly, after a few downward candles, price is below the 200. That's turned south, and so is the 50. Price dropping quite quickly all of a sudden now, these last few bars, and that blue will start moving quicker towards that purple. And our 50 period average does close in on the 200 as the stock market opens at 4:30. Let's pull up the ATR so we can prepare ourselves if this crossover does happen, which is looking unlikely at the minute. ATR currently showing at 1.8 pips. That'll be our widest stop loss of the day. 50 period moving average now just edged past that 200. As soon as this minute closes, that's when we'll be getting in. ATR reading at 2 pips. We'll take it at 2 pips. It just ticked over there. Now it's gone to 1.9. We'll call it 2. So that'll be 3 times ATR value, which will be 6 pips stop loss and 6 pips take profit on one trade. There is our risk calculated, and I'll put that on screen now. Let's get into the trade. And there's our trades there, again, in at the same price. So let's go stop loss, 60 points, take profit, 60 points. And for this one, as we know by now, 60 points just on the stop loss. So we can see those stop losses there. It has given us quite a bit of room for the trade to move, but also obviously it means that there's more room for it to be able to go, for us actually to take profit. This is quite a way off, to be honest. About 15 minutes or so into the trade and not a lot going on. Price just moving around our entry there. It is on the move again now, but not in the direction we want. It's going green. We don't want green. We want red. Red, red, red. Sell the euro, everybody. It's not looking good right now. It is looking like more green. It's back above the 200. It's continuing to find those highs just now. And that is the stop loss for the third of the day. That is a hat trick of losses for us on the 5200 on the 1 minute chart. There's the trade. We sort of got in at a good point in this range, and it looked like we might have been heading favorably, but then it turns and it pushes and it pushes. And we had the wide ATR, so we did give it a chance to run, but there you see 60 points in the difference there, and that is what knocks our trade out. Price taking a dip off since we got knocked out of the trade. It's come back up though, so not sure which way it's going to go at the moment. The 50 and the 200 are getting a little bit closer together though still. 3 pretty large red candles forming, which have added a lot of downward pressure to price there. We're seeing a volume spike as well. Was hoping to get in one more trade for the session, but price dropping off big time here. The 50 is going to chase, and those two lines are definitely going to split further apart. It will be a long time before they cross again unless there's an immediate reversal. So on that basis, we are going to end it there for the session. And it wasn't the best session, as you saw, 3 straight losses. So not good for the old bank balance. But I didn't hear no bell, so we will be back for one more session tomorrow to see if we can win back some of that money. Alrighty, we are back for the final session. It is just gone 10:30. And this is one of the most uncertain, rangy, choppy mornings that we've seen. There is absolutely no unity of thought going on in this market this morning. As you see here, we've got a buy trade right there, pretty near the top if you ask me, and likely to have been stopped out. Then we're in a sell trade here. Actually, that sell trade's not the worst. That maybe might have got something, but there's a good chance we get stopped out way up here as well. In fact, we get stopped out before that because we'd actually get into this buy trade around about here or at the start of this candle. Either way, not looking good, and probably stopped out on that one as well. So glad that we've missed all those this morning. We obviously want the euro to start selling off and go short, get out of this range, as that's where we can actually get into a trade. This is volatile though. I mean, on the ATR we're up at 2 pips already, so a lot of this range would be about 2 pips, I'd say. Not the easiest to trade with, so all the best to you if you have been trading the 5200 on the 1 minute chart on the euro US dollar this morning. That is our economic calendar on this Thursday. Happy Muharram Day for everybody celebrating that. What have we had? There's not a lot going on. Employment change in Australia. So they came in about as expected. Well, they actually added a lot less jobs, to be fair, than they thought they would. They thought they were going to add 68k on forecast, but only added 2,000. Trade balance for the Swissy came in 90 minutes ago. That was about as expected. But what could be affecting us throughout the day? Well, 20 minutes or so, we've got the trade balance. It's on the euro, but it's Spain's trade balance. I don't think this is going to have any real impact at all. You might see the smallest spike in volume, but because Spain's economy is just a smaller part of the larger Eurozone, it's unlikely to have any real effect. 330 for the US dollar. Again, we've got numbers coming out. Philadelphia Fed Manufacturing Index and employment, and the usual initial jobless claims. Might see a bit of a spike in volume there. If there is going to be a spike today, it's likely to come from that. But obviously nothing is guaranteed. On the whole though, nothing major to watch for. We should just be able to apply the technical strategy as normal without having to think that any of these economic factors are necessarily going to drag us out. But if it is going to be one, the 330 initial jobless claims just might do it. Price hopping along in favour of the euro to the green side at the moment. It's going to drag that 50 upwards. Let's see if these Spanish trade numbers can crush the euro by any chance. So they had forecast a trade balance surplus of almost 2 billion for Spain, but it comes in at under a billion deficit. As we expected though, not having a volume spike or a volatility spike, price just staying within its usual boundaries. Also, for all the Norwegian watchers and listeners, the Norwegian central bank did just hold interest rates at 0%. Price still just kind of ranging in the last 15-20 minutes, getting a little bit into a high. Now it's moving. There it moves up to a brand new high again. We do want it to come down. We'd like to try and be able to get some of those losses back from the last few days by getting us into a trade. But on the other hand, no trades is also preferable to this kind of choppy market that's just disappearing off the left of screen. And these last 10 minutes or so now, we are seeing price move into new highs and new highs. A lot of green candles on the bounce there. That gap is going to widen, and our entry trade at the crossover is looking less and less likely with every candle that passes. But a steep drop off after a bit of a cooling period is now seeing the price back below the 50 average. And already, if we see the drop continue, that 50 average starting to do that slow turn already there. And price really ricocheting in this alleyway of uncertainty here, off the 200 and off the 50 there again. We had seen a good period of time going on there where the 50 had been moving closer to the 200, but now we can see price has gone comfortably back above the 50, and that line has turned with it. If price takes off, so too will that 50 line from the 200. Let's hope we get a trade today, and it continues its run into greener pastures. It's going to be a while before that 50 comes back down now. Price just sitting in a range at the moment, hovering right around that 50 line. Not much going on with it. Price action had still been in that narrow frame there, but it's just broken up to the upside again. So where those 50 and 200 lines have been getting closer, now they look like they're going to once again move that bit further apart. And we really could not get a trade today the way it's going. Strength to strength for the euro. That run up continues. It did just dip below the 50 for a minute there, but now new highs once again, clearly breaking any resistance in its path. Back down it comes off a sharp red candle there, though there might be hope for us yet. Price has been ranging, just coming down a little bit more, 5 minutes before we got these initial jobless claims from the US. 50 period moving average on a good slope down now, and here comes those initial jobless claims, forecast at 380,000. Still waiting for these jobless claims figures to roll through. We can see with the Philadelphia Fed numbers, they missed with the manufacturing index compared to the forecast, but they did beat employment forecast. We're seeing the euro strengthen though. It's comfortably back above the 50 average. Not ideal after a good bit of downward pressure was put on. We did see a little bit of an increase in volume, but not a lot, as volume was above what it is now just 10-15 minutes ago. So not much of a spike from the 330 numbers. We'll keep looking out for the jobless claims figures though. It's not come through on the platform, but I did look it up and the figure is 348,000. So it is better than the 380,000. That is a win for the dollar, but we have seen euro strength coming out of it. A strong reversal happening here though, straight back below the 50 and hurtling towards the 200. It had looked promising, it really has spiked there. Price had come close to the 200 line, nearly touching it, but a big bounce in that last candle and an increase in volume takes price up a good way. But look at that, just as quick as it runs up, it comes right back down, negating the entirety of that candle. Wonder if we'll see one of those again. It doesn't know what to do, it's hopping up and down like a pogo stick. And this is exactly the sell-off we want to see right now. Big red candles coming, the 50 turns. Just recovered, but has now dropped once again, and that 50 crossing the 200 is looking very likely now. Price just living in a range at the moment. It is still below the 200 though, and those lines are getting very close together. On their current trajectories, they will still cross. The moving average is nearly touching now. Going to just pull up the ATR. And our average true range at the moment at 1 pip 6 pipettes, 1.6 pips. And look at this last ditch effort from the price to stop our crossover. Currently the blue is poking through the purple. If it closes through, that is it, we are in. So we'll be looking at 448. The blue is passing the purple and it closes there. That is our cross. We are in. We're currently looking at 1.8 pip ATR, so that would be 5.4 pips to the stop loss and take profit. We've calculated the risk in preparation of entering this trade, but it is climbing, and is it going to close through? Let's see, this is right down to the wire. We are zoomed in as much as we can here, and it has closed past it. So you can see our risk on screen now, and we're entering 2 sell trades. So let's pull up our trade here. And we can say the stop loss is going to be 54 points, and so is the take profit for that one. And then for this one, just 54 points on the stop loss. There we go. So that's a 0.25% capital risk for each of these trades for a total 0.5%. And you can see both our stop loss up there and our take profit down the bottom. So let's get selling the euro, everybody. A lot of buyers on the euro right now. This is not looking good for our traders. It does get very close up to our stop loss, about 3/4 of the way there. Oh, and there it is. Stop loss triggering once more. There's the trade there. You can see, got in right here. Not a terrible position. I mean, if we were here, it would have been saved. At the moment, it's looking like that's going to be right at the top that we were knocked out, but it's only a minute there, so price could easily get past this in the next few periods or so. And now price takes that big drop. Look at that. We're stopped out right at the top, and here comes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 red candles on the bounce. Price just carrying on its range for the last 30 minutes or so. Don't think we're going to get much more out of it today, so I'm going to call that for the end of the last session on the 5200 moving average crossover 1 minute time frame strategy. Let's round off that one trade we had today and all of our trades in the journal. Here it is then, our final journal for the strategy with that trade added onto the bottom there. Another loss. We do see a lot of red on this chart. Pretty abysmal performance from the 5200 moving average crossover. With our trade from today, we entered in fine. It seemed okay. It was quite confident in where it was going to go. Started ranging, and then it jumped up, and it just got knocked out before it did take a big drop downwards. So a little bit of bad luck there in the sense that we got caught out at the top. But that's part of trading. Bad luck, good luck. It comes around. It maybe just demonstrates that you do need to widen that stop loss if you are going to be on the 1 minute chart. Get out there with 5 times ATR, 6 times ATR, something heavier like that. Overall, we took 8 trades. That was an average of 2 trades a day across the 4 days. Losses on 3 of the days. We had 3 losses to begin with. Then we had 1 win on a day where it trended really nicely. Then another 3 losses, and then today, obviously, that final loss. But even after all those terrible losses straight through the week, we are only down thereabouts 2.5% on our trading balance. Started just over £98,000 and finished off just below 96,000. As you can see, even with a secure money management system in place, you can just whittle down your capital over time. If you'd taken a sell trade right at the start of the week, you'd see you'd be in a little bit of money because it did keep consistently coming down from 17843 to 16963 in the end. So we did do the strategy, and as you can see, one last time, quite a lot of losses. You take it on at your own risk. Let's jump over to our final thoughts on it. It's a bit simple, which, don't get me wrong, it's not inherently bad if something's simple. If it works for you and makes you money, then hey, more power to you. But I would say often in trading, signals that are too simplistic just don't cut it consistently over time, especially when they're as slow as the 50 and the 200 crossover is. I know in the dynamic that the 50 is intended to be the faster moving average of the two, obviously, but that doesn't mean that it's fast. Some of our trades we were getting in at the peak of price because that response time was just too sluggish. Still though, there's plenty to test out with the strategy, whether that's changing the period inputs of the moving averages to be something even slower, or switching in a different type of average like the exponential average. You might want to widen that ATR distance from your entry price to give your trades a bit more room to move, or you might want to overhaul the entire money management system. There is a lot to play about with it, and I'm sure this isn't the last chart that we'll trade a moving average crossover on. But will it be on the 1 minute chart? Is all of this just the fault of the particular time frame we've been using because it's too erratic and unreliable? Are we drowned out by the inconsistency of price? What strategies are actually sustainable on something as mad hatter as the 1 minute chart? Can we legally even call it a golden cross and a death cross if it's not done on the daily price chart? We are absolutely going to find out the answers to these questions and more, as there will be plenty of the 1 minute trading chart to come. That is it. If you would like more information, then there will be some in the description. And do not forget that all strategies are tested using demo money. I am not some sort of psychopathic sociopath who is inclined to forward test these strategies with real money. But as this isn't finance advice, I can't tell you what not to do with your money. So if you are keen for the simple moving average crossover on the 1 minute chart, then dive right in. Thank you for watching. This is Project Trade. I am Trading's last cartographer from the Department of Charts and Recreation. There is more trading to come.